Hey folks, I just wanted to give a background and little tutorial on my credit tracker that I'm offering on the Plan to Spend Etsy store. A word about credit, I personally just would avoid any credit usage that is going to incur interest. I think that high interest rates on most every credit card just can quickly get out of control, and that's how people can get into real trouble with debt. But credit cards can be a really useful tool when used responsibly. And I say this as someone who avoided them for a long time because I knew that getting into credit card debt was a quick way to snowball into a situation that I couldn't dig myself out of. And so I just used an ATM card and would manage the amount in my account. But credit cards have at least three benefits that I think are pretty significant. One is the actual gifts and rewards that you can get from using them. So my wife and I have a cashback credit card that we use for our groceries, gas, and eating out. That card alone generates about 60 to 70 bucks every couple of months. It also came with like a $200 cash signing bonus. So it's just, it's small amounts of cash, but it does still add up. And then she also has a credit card that gets us Delta Sky Miles, and we've used those points to go on trips, reduce cost trips. So that one's been really nice as well. Another major benefit of credit cards is that it helps you even out your spending, right? Or at least when you need to take money out of your accounts to pay for your spending. So if you're somebody who has variable income and it is just more predictable to pay on a credit card schedule, that can be really beneficial. Last one is if you're interested in building your credit cards are a great way to do that. I had the, quote, good kind of bad credit for a while because I didn't have a super long history with credit. And so even though I didn't have any marks against me, I also hadn't been showing that I was responsible with credit. So having credit cards is a way to build that history. And in today's age, when interest rates for things like buying a house are really high, that credit rate is going to help you transfer that into savings if you take on those types of loans. So that's a little bit of my background and why, for me, I didn't need a credit card tracker that was about paying down credit card debt because I don't have that. But what I do have is a desire to pay my credit card off each billing cycle, essentially, without being charged interest. And for a long time, I would just kind of do this by periodically trying to settle up. And I would do this every couple of weeks, really. And honestly, it's just kind of messy because sometimes a charge is pending and you might not realize it hasn't posted. And so you think you're paying a certain amount, but it didn't have, say it was eating out at a restaurant. Well, the tip hadn't posted yet. And so the actual amount comes in a couple days later. I've noticed, some grocery stores even can take 2, 3, 4 days to post certain transactions, and it really kind of depends on the card and the bank, how often they even put pending transactions up for you to see. And so trying to do that just kind of, without a schedule is kind of messy and an easy way to get off. The other thing is I wanted to be able to say, okay, this was a charge that was something, I was eating out with friends or went to a happy hour. I'm going to pay for that out of sort of my own discretionary spending account versus, okay, this was something that we paid for the house and it was a substantial thing and we're going to pay for it out of our house fund, which is a different account. So I wanted a way to categorize transactions by that billing cycle. So right before I need to make the payment or when I'm ready to make that payment, I just can go through all those accounts and move money over to the account where I pay the credit card from and pay it off sort of in one swoop. So that leads me to this credit card tracker. It's pretty simple. It's pretty cheap for that reason. But I think it's handy if you have a situation like mine. So it's pretty straightforward to set up. You can enter up to 5 credit cards, give it a name, and then set the recurring due date that is most common. As far as I can tell, every credit card sort of has a recurring due date. It might shift here and there for a weekend, but don't sweat that too much. The idea is just like, what is the normal day that your billing is due? And then what are your payment categories? So for me, these are sort of the accounts that I use: personal spending, personal bills. These are, again, out of my discretionary accounts, my funds that are just in my name, and then there are things that are shared with my wife. and funds that we have set up, and the health savings account that we have through her work. So I might charge something up front, and then we'll get refunded through the HSA. I would use that payment category. This could also just be the names of you and your partner if you're like sharing a credit card, but splitting expenses. That's a use case I've seen people mention on Reddit. So once you've set up your credit cards, the main thing is to try and predict your billing cycles. And for me, I found this was surprisingly not intuitive. I couldn't find anywhere listed. This is kind of how we build a billing schedule for my Capital One card account. It looked like it was actually just applying a length based on the number of days in the month for the month that the billing cycle ended in. For my Visa card, it's I think more straightforward than it's like 26 days before the due date. So really, I think you just kind of have to look for the pattern in your card, and then where you want to start tracking. If you point in time where you want to start tracking, enter the first billing cycle start date. That's something you can definitely find on your credit card statement. Definitely use your credit card statement to get that first credit card start date right. And then what is the corresponding due date for that? And so it's typically going to be, it starts somewhere in the middle of a month, it ends in the following month, and then your account is actually due shortly after in the next month. So for my first example, purchases starting in October on the 14th are actually going to be due in December on the 7th. And from there, you can set kind of what you want to use for your detection method. Again, this is kind of hard for me to know, like what is all the different kind of ways for doing this. But I've set up a couple options. You can do it relative to the due date. I think that's probably going to be fairly common. In my case, it's 26 days before the due date. But you could also just set this up recurring every X days. And so if you wanted to set it up every 30 days, that's generally going to get you in the ballpark, and then you can, at the end of a billing cycle, add in the actual date with this override column. You can set that up, again, for up to 5 cards, but what that does is then in your transactions, when you put them in, it's going to calculate your billing cycle and automatically tag that. And then you can also select which card and payment category you want to associate a transaction with. And there's also a checkbox on here for you to indicate once it's been paid. There are also some options in here that I think are going to come into play. So a transaction might be a payment, so you can mark something as a payment as well as one of the categories. Or you could say duplicate and ignore, because honestly, credit card data is pretty noisy, and sometimes you just get these lines that are like they were trying to process a transaction, but for whatever reason, there wasn't actually an amount associated with it. So there is the ignore option in there for that case too. And then lastly, what that gives you is this interaction, this dashboard that you can interact with, where you can select the card and select your billing cycle and get information about what's due and when. So for example, I just paid off my November transactions. And so you can see I had all these categorized against those different categories, those payment types, and because they've all been checked off, there's no amount remaining, there's no unpaid transactions left, and I do get a summary just of the top transactions by size, as well as a visual of that, and all these are now good through December 7th. The one that has now started is the December billing cycle, so that will be due in January. For that, I just have one charge so far in the shared backup account. I haven't yet moved that money over into the payment account. I won't do that until closer to that January timeframe. So yeah, that's a little bit of an overview. It also comes with a mobile view, which is just a copy, it's just pulling the same data as this interactive dashboard, but it's formatted a bit better to work on your mobile device. Definitely use the Google Sheets app. If you're trying to use this on your mobile phone, it's going to be a better experience. Let me know if this is something that interests you, or if there's other features that would make it more interesting, and would love to hear any feedback you have. Thanks. Bye.